Welcome to a special bonus episode of EUphoria. Today we're going to be talking about the future of Europe and long-term partnerships. Now, to do this, I brought on a couple of special guests. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Some of them you may know, some of them you might not. We're going to start with you, Mark.
Hey, my name is Mark Schnell. I'm German-born, but I have a South Korean mother. I heard that's the perfect mix to be a strong gamer. And I'm heading up the EU League management team. What that means is I'm responsible for the governance of our league and the structural design of it.
Now, some people might know you as Snowbird as well, as you guys did an AMA yesterday on Reddit. So for any of those wondering, this is also Snowbird.
Correct.
Yes. The ultimate gamer tag.
Yes, the Diamond 5 player. Yeah. Famous
Snowbird.
on EOS.
Wonderful. All right, Ben, how about you go next?
Well, I'm the famous bronze player. I'm Ben Spunt. I'm the founder and CEO of Misfits and live in Miami, Florida, but loving my time here now in Berlin.
Yes, icy cold Berlin.
I left 80 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 degrees Fahrenheit, or I guess 0 Celsius versus 22 or 25.
You're learning so quickly about being European.
I love the culture.
We'll get you on metric next. It'll be a great time.
No, metric is much better. I agree.
It is much better.
We should switch.
All right, last but not least, Carlos. I think a lot of people might already know you, but introduce yourself anyway.
Very good, thanks. I'm Carlos Ocelor, and I am 27 years of age. I started in esports with 15, back with World of Warcraft, played it for 4 years straight, and then I moved into League of Legends. In both games, I was for a period of time considered by some people the best player in the world. And
by yourself?
I was absolutely, most definitely the best player in the world in World of Warcraft. And in League of Legends, I'll say that I had my good 6 months where I genuinely believed that I was the best. But then I wasn't. And that's okay. Then I became a full-time CEO. I left my competitive career 3.5 years ago. And the rest is history, learning day by day how to build companies and lead people forward.
Love it. Now we have to see if you go toe-to-toe with the perfect hybrid of German and Korean genes.
No, that's impossible to beat.
Like,
Mark is the ultimate esports competitor. You guys, just because he has Diamond 5, you got to understand he's actually the champ here.
I've tried to go competitive in a variety of games, actually, back in the day. Yeah, I was terrible. I never made it in any.
So he's Diamond 5. He probably has like 25 recorded hours in League of Legends.
I'm actually a has-been the Diamond 5. I'm plat now. I can't get back up.
Oh, that's the peak. I see.
I'm in bronze, so any help that you guys can provide would be much appreciated.
Play more. This is my number one piece of advice.
He was expecting anyone to say, yeah, we can do it, dude, but there's no one here stepping up for the for the task. No.
So before we get into it, it's kind of a big topic and a serious topic, so I thought we could start a little bit light. Carlos, your team is playing today. We are recording on the Friday, where G2 will be playing Splice.
Oh, I should have made that question before. Like, I was going to make the question, hey, what do I do? As if we already played or we didn't play, you know?
Yeah, no,
Let's
talk
about that.
We'll let people know, because I wanted to get some predictions. Now, Ben, unfortunately, your team has been knocked out. But
R.I.P.
But Carlos and Mark, I don't know if you can do this as head of the league.
I want every team to win.
There you go. Look at that. You can call it a 3-3, the class.
That's the half German part.
We love ties.
That's the half German part speaking.
All right, Carlos. G2 versus Splice. What are we going to see here? Is it going to be a 3-0? How strong are you feeling about this?
My expectation is that we are going to win 3-1. Of course, I have to say that we win. And on one hand, I think Splice is a really good team, so they'll be able to win at least one game. On the other, I don't want to say 3-2 because then that would mean that I'm not as confident on my team. So I'm telling you 3-1, not because I'm an oracle, but because it's the most polite and socially acceptable result for me to tell you.
We had a discussion on this at the last podcast about how 3-1 is the cop-out. It's like, I believe they're going to win, but I'm not confident enough to say a 3-0.
No, exactly. 3-0 is like cocky kid, you know?
All right, Ben, I know your team's not here.
Yes.
Do you believe in Carlos? Do you think Carlos's boys are going to pull it through?
I'll take the classic analyst desk move and take Splice.
Ooh, nice.
That's because Marty is below it.
Because Marty what?
It's around the room.
Oh. No, I honestly think it's a toss-up. I think both teams are playing well. Splice played really well last week. We haven't seen G2. So we'll really see how they adapt, and I think it's going to be a great match.
No, Splice is doing very well.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy that Marty's team wins, except for the fact that it's playing against my
your
team.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah.
I'll be there cheering.
Honestly, I've
I'm
never asked-
taking. Do you have a jersey for me or any merch that I could?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh,
I'll
I'll
cheering
make that
the audience.
happen.
All right.
You're gonna be in the studio today?
I will be there.
Oh
All
my
right.
god!
Exciting. You guys are probably going to hear this by the time the match has already happened, so maybe you're laughing about whatever the result is. Maybe Carlos is a prophet because it was 3-1. Who knows? And Mark going with the classic to 3-3, the true non-biased prediction. Playing a sixth game just to balance it out. Of course, so if you guys haven't noticed already, on eu.loesports.com, there's an article titled "The Future of the ULCS," talking about a lot of changes that are going to be coming through in the future for EULCS. Mark is kind of the head of the big person who is leading up these changes. Can you just give us like a quick TLDR? What are like the biggest notes coming in from this change?
Yeah, probably the biggest, most visible change is that we are going to partner with 10 teams that we are going to lock in to the league and work with them as long-term partners. And that will mean that the existing promotion relegation model will disappear. Instead, we'll have the same 10 teams in the league. And so that's, I guess, the most visible external change. Important, though, also on the business side, of course, is that we are significantly changing the way we organize revenue and distribute revenue. So in the current system, how it works is that teams are basically paid a stipend. And on top of that, teams, of course, do their own business. But it is a fixed amount that went up year over year. But to be fair, and we recognize this, wasn't something that could ever sort of keep up with how the industry overall developed. And we knew that was ultimately not going to be a scalable system for various reasons. One other big reason being that it's not really aligning our incentives. Ideally, we live in a world where all the league, as well as all of the partners, share the same goal, which is maximizing value of the league overall, and then sharing in the success of that. That old model did not incentivize that at all. Like, for what it's worth, I don't know, like Ben or Carlos couldn't have cared less what the league overall makes, because it's not like if they make more, then they get more. So this is something big that we felt like we needed to fix, and we felt like a partnership model was a requirement for us to be able to fix this.
Cool. I mean, I think this is like a pretty big deal. I think a lot of people are going to draw similarities to what NA is doing, and I know we've said pretty explicitly that there are a lot of comparison points. But for you guys, for Ben and Carlos, how are you feeling about this initially? I know the announcement's pretty fresh coming out about this future plan. What are your initial kind of impressions of this as a change for the European ecosystem?
So obviously very excited about it. I think that the way that it is structured is a way that will provide teams stability, more revenue opportunities, and ultimately, I think that for us, with the stipend or the subsidy that Riot previously provided was great, but it was almost too predictable in the sense of there's never any upside potential for us teams, and we always believe that the teams are contributing a lot to the ecosystem and to the league and to growing to the league, and if the league got sponsors because of the performance and the teams paying players and providing all the resources that we do, that ultimately we really didn't see any of that upside. So this flips that script. So for us, I think it's really the right way to think about this and structure it, and obviously very excited.
For us, it's literally the same thing. I would also focus on the fact that not only do teams have a higher upside in case things go well, but I think it's very important that teams also have a lower upside if things don't go well. And pretty much every team holds, or the group of teams hold each other accountable and hold also the league accountable for all those shortcomings shown. Because at the end of the day, everyone wants to maximize revenue, so our businesses do better.
We win or lose together.
Exactly. No, I think that's a really good thing. And I'm a big believer that when you have fire in your lower back, is when you... Yesterday in our private setup, I said the other word, but fire in your lower back. I'm a big believer in that kind of promoting more success and teams thinking more proactively and creatively about ways to monetize and capitalize on the success of the league, and I think that's positive.
Yeah, I think also it's a shift of the paradigm of Riot internally, right? So historically, if you look across their leagues, there's never really been a focus on maximizing revenue of the leagues. The production value has always been insane, but it's been a cost center, quite honestly, and not a focus of maximizing revenue. And this shift to trying to either offset costs or increase revenue is great.
And this is
one thing I want to say to this though, because maximizing revenue, sure, but that sounds very corporate. I'll put it in this perspective. We're never going to go away from our core belief that we want our, never say never, right? But we want our core content to be freely available for everyone. We want it to be easily consumable, accessible, and all of those things. So these things remain important to us, because just maximizing revenue, if you put that, say it that way, you could also think that, wow, now they're gonna really
slash expenses.
Yeah, I mean,
no,
they're gonna slash all the expenses. They're gonna put plaster ads everywhere. Everything's gonna be exclusive and paywalled.
I've been told I wear a plastic bag now on camera because it's cheaper. Yes. No, I mean,
so that's not the idea.
No, but just the opposite. You guys are investing heavily. Look at what you've done to the studio here in Berlin.
Yeah,
I don't think any of that stuff changes. So I think it's only good. There's no negative spin off of it.
The thing I'm curious about is. We talk about this partnership, but from your perspective, Mark, kind of as a member of Riot and as the voice of this league in so many ways, are you worried at all about a future where Riot maybe doesn't have, as much 100% creative control over the league because you're accountable to these partners, to these other bodies within the structure?
Well, I mean, I think something's got to give always. Like in a partnership, in which you trust each other, in which you collaborate with each other, if you're not willing to give a little bit of control or rights or any those things away, then it's just not gonna have maximum effectiveness. So we think, sure, if you will, there's a little bit of risk attached to that. It's look, let's use maybe a relationship as an
analogy,
as an analogy here. If you just keep to yourself, if you're not willing to open up, is that relationship ever going to be really fruitful and fulfilling? And it's kind of going to be probably hard. So I see it in a similar way. We are at a point where we believe that by working together, we're going to be able to increase the value and make this a more entertaining and more exciting thing for everyone. And that means we do want to, and we are looking forward to, I personally am looking forward to getting a lot more input from teams, working closer together with them. Because I do honestly think that looking at 2019, I do hope we have 10 partners on board, and every single one of them can teach me amazing things and bring something to the table that the league doesn't currently have to that capacity. And that's, I think, really the strength of this model. And does that mean we're going to lose control, however you want to call it? Maybe, but that's not really how I look at that.
I mean, it seems fair, in this partnership where there are 10 people, that it feels like it will be a more collaborative effort. And I'm curious, though, you guys have both talked about the positives. You really like the, the economic and the business side. It does feel like it's going to be a lot more sustainable for you guys. But are there any initial concerns that you have? We're going to chance to talk about every part of this announcement, every part of what's been kind of committed to on Riot's end from this announcement. So is there anything that stands out to you that maybe there's concerns about, that you want to know more about?
Look, there's always going to be a lot of even big items. Every team is going, or many teams are going to be concerned about, investors are going to be concerned about. And that is, I think, a normal thing, considering the fact that we cannot just mimic what a traditional sport did, just because our dynamics are so different. And we can't just mimic what NALCS did, just because our dynamics are so different. Europe has so many different countries and cultures and languages within, and it's just a different market, way different market. And that poses a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunities. The clear challenges for me at least, and this is something that I've been always very vocal about, at least internally, and I've always tried to even understand myself better, is how does this partnership itself fit together, considering all these regions, all the existence of these regions, because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that whatever you invest in, wherever you put all your resources and your content team and your players and pretty much all your organization's focus onto, is the place that is going to be growing the most and the place that is going to be the most impactful within the game, and pretty much make EULCS the best league in the world. And you know, you want to make sure that whatever is surrounding your region, in other words, these regional leagues happening nowadays, some of them are really nice and successful, such as LVP and so on. You don't want them to shadow in any form or shape what you're doing with your main product. So that is definitely a concern, but at the same time it's an opportunity, because North America does not have those regions in which they can build player base and viewership and capitalize on opportunities. So I think that's going to be a big item moving forward. And I know for a fact that Riot is working proactively on making sure that everyone wins from this. So I'm not worried on the kind of final result and product of what's going to happen, pretty much. But I am concerned in a good way about the discussions we're having today, shaping up that future product.
Definitely fair. I think we'll get a chance to talk more when we talk about player development, also about kind of the development of the professional scene, not just on personal player development, but also on like some of those leagues you're talking about, the regional leagues, making sure we are getting the cream of the crop, building up these players, giving everybody who's coming from Challenger, you know, a chance to grow up and to also to make sure that is a cool part of
right.
The
I'm making like the ULC is the place to be, like not only for our people in Europe, but even from people from North America, even from people from different regions. Really, we want this to be the ultimate league, the absolute best product in esports.
Hear that, Santorin? You're not the last North American import. Now, Ben, from your side, is there anything you want to add? Is there anything that like stands out to you?
Yeah, I think Carlos made a really good point about maximizing the value at the top for the EU LCS. I think my concerns just simply echo that. Otherwise, it's going to be just simply execution of a strategy that Riot puts in place. And there's always going to be execution risk and market conditions changing, and we have to be reactive. And there's always the question of, you know, with the EU team, do they have the capability to react fast enough and to do things perhaps that goes against priorities of a different region and independence from other regions. I think that's something that's key. Then short-term risk, I think, is if you're a new team coming in, potentially a soccer club and or a non-soccer club, or a new team coming in, and you're told that you're going to be starting a season in the beginning of January, and you only have 6 weeks or a month to really get set up infrastructure-wise.
That's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare. I remember when we first got our Challenger Series team, when we acquired it, it was actually first a Challenger Series qualifying team, became a Challenger Series team. We started Challenger Series literally less than a week after we got the team. And it was a nightmare trying to get that all spun up. So I can't imagine trying to do it at an LCS level where you got to hire, coaches and trainers and gaming house at a minimum. So there's some short-term risk for that. But that's all overcomable.
Yeah, and I think we can talk about that more when we talk about the application itself in terms of like what Riot is looking for and how much of that they want to see kind of put in place and together ahead of time when teams are looking to, to apply for the future. So our first topic and kind of focusing in is about the removal of relegation as part of this long-term partnership process. And I'm curious, what do we kind of, Mark, from your perspective, what are the expected pros from this? Why was this something that we brought to the table? How do we see this improving the league from a Riot perspective?
Yeah, there's a variety of things there. I think number one is definitely more stability for teams. I mean, we've seen, and we've been, of course, also been receiving feedback from teams over the past years that the fact that you could pretty much be out of the league every 4 months just really makes it hard just to operate a business, right? You have to plan ahead. You have to build your business plan. You have to manage your cash flow. You have to do so more. I mean, the other two can probably speak better to that, but it's just difficult. It also one of the downsides there was that depending on how your performance goes over the course of a split, you sometimes were forced to make unhealthy business decisions in terms of like player choices that were very short-term oriented, but you felt you had to because you needed to protect your investment and protect, ensure your survival in the league, because unfortunately we didn't have a strong layer you could fall back to in case you do relegate, because the Challenger Series just systemically was never really a greatly sustainable league for teams. That's just how it developed over time. And in summary, I guess flexibility, that's number one. That's the number one positive I would see.
This is going to be both the teams who went from Challenger to Worlds here in terms of coming in with G2, coming in with Misfits as well. But I'm curious from your guys' perspective, when you guys are, without giving away any real specifics here, when you're talking to sponsors, like, is this something that you're very aware of, that you have to be very upfront about? Is that like, this is a spot we may not hold, that this could go away, that we could sign a year or a 2-year deal and we could not be in the LCS, 6 months, 9 months from now?
So you're talking from the when relegation exists.
Yeah,
correct?
when relegation exists. So like in previous to this split,
so,
like if the threat of relegation, how big of a factor was that when it came to like locking down sponsorships and securing these deals?
So it's definitely very impactful, because first of all, you can't commit as a company with 100% certainty that this is at least the minimum value you will be able to provide to the partner in question or the investor in question, which means that you have far less leverage, which means that less dollars come into play and less and a shorter commitments also. So it was definitely bad from a business point of view. But now, if we go from just simply league-wide and industry-wide point of view, the existence of relegation in a setup where there's only 10 teams in the league, because in a setup when there's 20, 30, then it's different because the risk is far lower. But in a setup where there's literally 10 teams in the league, there's let me try to rephrase this the best I can. Okay, so there are teams whose DNA is to win, and there are teams whose DNA is to entertain. There are teams who have DNA of both, and there are teams who have DNA of a little bit of both, right? And when there is relegation, it doesn't matter what your DNA is, you're forced to be competitive. So even if your DNA is to entertain the people through content, while you are having a correct team, you can't pull that plan forward because you're forced to win. If you don't win, you're gonna go down, which subsequently makes the league, to have less relevancy and impact. If every team right there is...
But Carlos, I think what you're saying implies a little bit that having no relegation will lead to teams not having to be as competitive, like necessarily. Well, I would challenge that point of view.
Here's the thing. This is, I think, mathematically. If there's 10 teams in the league, there's always going to be, let's say, 4 teams that will always do everything it takes to win. And that's a good thing. They will even go ahead and be okay with losing money year over year because their DNA is winning. Would I consider G2 as part of that mix? Maybe yes. But if everyone would do that, the league wouldn't be as successful as it could. There always needs to be a team that is incredibly good at creating content and very decent at putting teams together, but that not necessarily will undoubtedly be fighting for first place every time. And I think that a league that is successful and the best league in the world needs to have a little bit of everything. And with the existence of relegation, that a little bit of everything is simply not there.
Sorry, Ben, I didn't want to...
No, go ahead.
I would put it a little bit differently. I mean, from my point of view, we do want every single team in the league to want to win, right? We want every single team in the league to want to go to Worlds and represent the region and ultimately, potentially, win Worlds. But that said, of course, the reality of a league and a competition is that not every team can't win. That's just how it is.
So this past split might contradict that statement, as everyone could take games off of anyone. But yes.
But after 9 weeks, we're gonna have a ranking, and there's gonna be a team at 10th, and there's gonna be a team at first. That's just how it's always gonna be. But I want the team that's 10th also to, not be content with being 10th, of course, but to want to win. And yes, not having relegation. How do you then deal with that? So we did want to make sure in this new structure that we have mechanics in place that prevent a team from just taking on the, Carlos. I appreciate that you're saying we want like this mix, and a team that is stronger in content and a team that is stronger at something else. And I would agree with that. But when it comes to like wanting to win, like I think that spirit needs to be in every team. And if a team intentionally says, that's not really our focus. Like we're just here to create memes.
Right. I understand. So it was obviously the way I perceive this is not as extremist or polarizing as there is one or the other, but more like which team is leaning where. You know what I mean? Which then I think is a positive. And I will never bash any team just because they're fifth and they are not in a position to be first. I will probably bash them more if they don't create any content to make the league more entertaining. At the end of the day, I see my players, I see even myself, I see Ben and Ben's team, every team as gladiators that come into an arena, The reason League of Legends esports exist is because the people get entertained with us. And it's our duty to entertain them. That's the bottom line. If you entertain them through decent gameplay and incredible content, then good for you. You're doing very good for the league and very good for the industry. So that's where I stand.
Yeah, I think a lot of people. I think the thing that like stands out to me the most actually about this thing is that you talk about like a team that's willing to commit 100% to competition, right? And I think we as a league love to see that because at the end of the day, like as a caster, that's what I want to see. I want to see teams fighting, die hard for the top spot. But in the old system, it didn't feel like performance was the best way to make a business successful, right? First place has always obviously been important. Winners are obviously going to get more followers. But if you tell me you've got, let's take the Delta Fox team from last year, obviously got a ton of viewership based on these names and these faces and the content associated with them and not the gameplay. I like the idea that in the future, because we're rewarding performance, there's metrics to actually reward performance in a new system. It does seem like some of the teams that are willing to invest more into competition are rewarded well, and the teams also that want to make more entertaining content are rewarded as well. And we're no longer choosing between one or the other.
There's not only incentives; there's also going to be punishments for freeloading, pretty much.
Yep. That's good.
Yeah, so it goes both ways. It's incentives on the other side, but then someone could just say, well, I don't really care too much about the money. Yes, then I'm going to get a little less. That's fine. So we also need to make sure that also doesn't work. And we will make sure that we have such mechanics in place.
And I think, though, that also comes back to you guys through this application process to make sure that when you are vetting applicants, that I think I want 10 gladiators.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ultimately, competition's going to breed...
Gannicus, Spartacus.
Yes.
You watch that?
Of course, I watch Spartacus.
On Stars? Best show ever.
On Stars? Amazing.
Oh, my God.
Just avoid quoting it directly. That's my only request.
Gannicus. That was a great show.
Oh, it was
fantastic.
Amazing. My favorite.
Amazing.
My favorite.
Yeah, that guy, what was his name? He passed away.
Oh, poor guy, man.
The lead.
But the second guy was also very legit.
He was very good. Anyways, back on topic. I think Riot has to do a good job of vetting candidates and applicants to make sure that they will be competitors. Ultimately, I think the removal of relegation is healthy, not just for teams, but also for players. You look about stability of rosters, and you look at other esports like Counter-Strike, where there's a roster swap season, and it is absolutely mayhem, ridiculousness of number of changes going on. And I think that a place, if you imagine like professional sports leagues, or take a look at the NBA, if every offseason, every team had 5 new starters, that's not healthy. No really way to build great storylines. And so the removal of relegation is important in that, because players will be able to sign with teams for longer terms because they know the team's going to be there. And similarly for sponsors, we were, one of your earlier questions was, well, have you guys experienced or have you been impacted by relegation? The answer is yeah. We just announced our Alienware deal. We've been working on it for literally almost a year.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much, sir. But one of the reasons why it took so long was because they just weren't sure if Misfits would be around. And why would they invest a lot of money and resources and time and energy into helping to build the Misfits Alienware story when they wouldn't know if we would be there, for the next year? So yeah, I think it definitely is impactful.
Yeah, and good to hear. And of course, we'll wish you luck. And what I assume will be your application process as well, as it's going to be hopefully competitive. Hopefully, we have 80 gladiators applying.
Yeah, no, there's no assurance.
Hopefully we have 500 gladiators applying.
I don't know how many. I have no idea what's a reasonable number for this. I've never.
A million gladiators.
80 sounds a lot. Maybe it is 500 gladiators. I don't know. Hopefully a lot of gladiators. But you brought up kind of like signing players for longer, and I think this is interesting because Carlos, I know you've Fnatic signed Reckless for 3 years. You guys have also committed to Perks for a long time. Him coming in is kind of a franchise player for you guys.
And we had 2 players that are finishing their 2-year contracts with us.
Yeah, so you guys are both have been in the past willing to commit, and Carlos, you even in a world where you still have to apply for this, have been willing to commit. In this world where we have permanent partnerships, do we see a lot more of this happening just across the board? Does it just make sense as a business to lock down a player for multiple years?
No, I'm not gonna lie to you. It was always very hard to sign long-term partnerships with long-term kind of contract with players, and that's why I was so proud of us changing 4 players in this lineup. Some of them willingly, some of them unwillingly. In the off season, we ended up with literally a completely different team except Perks, and we managed to re-sign Perks for 3 years, the bottling for another 3 years, get Jankos and Wonder for 2 years, and the coach for 3 years. So we have a combined 16 years of contracts, which is unprecedented in the Western world, right? That's something that gives me a lot of confidence and allows me to build on a long-term basis. And not only that, my content team, I don't even have to speak to them. They know what the contract durations are with the players, and by default tend to put much more efforts in promoting those players and in kind of pushing those storylines within G2. Why is that? Because they know that there's a high likely chance that 2 years from now they'll still be here. And same goes for partners. Partners see that we have the longest contract in the West, and they're like, okay, so I can trust that at the very least the vast majority of these players will be there, next year and the year later. So I think that this is the exactly what success for the industry means. Is long-term agreements with both partners and players alike, long-term agreements between publishers and teams, and those long-term agreements are the foundation of a successful entertainment industry, really.
Yeah, it feels to me, I think one of the things that we've seen in esports that's always interesting to me is it feels like we have some orgs that have these kind of big fan bases, but a lot of it still feels like it's about the individual players. And does this seem like a world where we can get a lot more people who are not just Perks fans or Reckless fans or Hansama fans, but Misfits fans, Fnatic fans, G2 fans who are loyal to this brand? Because, I mean, as an American growing up, right, Seahawks, or I would be verbally assaulted by my family if I chose any other team. Like that dedication runs really deep, and I know it's a similar story for football clubs. For you guys, do we see the same kind of thing potentially coming to League of Legends and to esports when we can actually make these kind of long-term deals?
One point that I wanted to mention, because it came up quite often, I've seen that in the community, is Europe is known for great storylines such as the Origin Miracle Run, from Challenger to the LCS, to Worlds, and then even to Worlds semis, right? I remember that year. It was an amazing storyline. I still think of that sometimes. We've had some really great brands over the years. And the sad thing about that is that we've lost those brands also again. And we also have to look at it from these teams invested in their brands. The league invested in those brands. There was a lot of fandom connections built up, and then suddenly that just vanishes, right? Like all that investments from all of the different sides is just hot air with no, it's just gone. And whenever you have a system where you put resources in somewhere and then those resources turn to nothing, then that has to be like a faulty system, right? So I would say yes, like that particular angle of story, you know, from Challenge Worlds, sure, that will not be possible. But at the same time, there's so many other new cool angles that you can build if you have teams that are that are in the league for a longer time, like historical rivalries. You know, I love things like, you know, these two teams met in the finals 4 years ago. Like, what did the two teams look like back then? What did they trash talk back then? And how is it going to look like right now?
Hey,
like,
and, I mean, look, we had Origin come out on Twitter and tweet something vaguely sounding like they might be applying to the process, and the first comment in the thread is already Ocelot versus Xpeke, Ocelot versus Xpeke.
Honestly, I would absolutely love to have him back in the LCS so I can spank him again. You know, I said it in a private kind of setup before, but you know, I'm very vocal about this. I would love to have my arch enemy sharing league with me. You know, I would really do. You know, maybe not as a kind of executive or whatever, but as a kind of you know, PR image or ambassador. You know what I mean? Because it's just incredibly. It's incredibly good to have these storylines and to know that 4 years ago that happened. The B word. I'm not gonna mention it. The B word happened, and you know, 4 years later or 5 years later, there's, you know, the storyline begins again. You know, after beating them in the grand finals of the LCS, and that's amazing, and that's what I live for. You know, that's the reason why I'm in this industry and why I really created G2 to have these moments.
And I mean, there's already stories now coming up too. I mean, even from your perspective, Ben, we've got Hans Sama versus Reckless. They were fighting for a lot of last year for who's the better AD carry. Reckless feels like the winner now, but Hans Sama's always been like who's always stepped up in the best of format. Doesn't get there, but maybe Summer is like reigniting that fire, and it does. It is nice to know if both these players or these orgs, if we see you know, similar faces once the partnerships come through, that whatever the new story is, we can have that similar kind of fire in the league. But I think there's a lot of positives here, but I think there's also a lot of people are concerned, right? We live in an EU sports environment, and this is an environment that I didn't really grow up in, but I know is a concern that a lot of people voice, is that they like the idea of relegation. And while it may not have been the best from a business perspective, they felt like it always pushed newer names, newer faces, you know, and while churning, you know, and losing a lot of those brands wasn't always good, there was always like, it wasn't just the top 6 teams going to playoffs, the bottom 4 teams were fighting for something too. So,
but I think there's an important point to make. First of all, is that the sports that we are used to watch in Europe, where relegation is a thing, you very, very, very rarely, if not ever, see a top team going down. Because the dynamics of the league, the dynamics of the game itself, simply don't allow for a better team to lose so many games that would put them in a position where they would go down. However, we are in a completely different environment here. League of Legends is a game where there's, of course, many different players, but it's a game where you can watch other people stream, the best players in the world stream. You can see how they play. You can literally mimic what they do, spend 14 hours a day playing like them, and you have actually a pretty good shot at learning how to play the game as well as them. And mechanically, there may not be that many differences between the first and the 100th best player in the world. It's all about team play. It's all about these kind of different aspects, which makes it very easy, or at least much easier than in traditional sports, for a top team to go down just because they had 3 bad months in which team play wasn't there, in which there's only five players in a team. One maybe broke his hand. Like literally that one thing that can break the whole chain. And that dynamic alone makes it for this non-relegation topic to be relevant in my eyes. I've never seen Real Madrid go down in the league, and I don't expect to see that in the future.
Yeah, I think it's apples to oranges.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that ultimately removing relegation will increase competitive desire of teams. And then secondly, I think, like you said, people say, oh, removing relegation is not going to be competitive. Sure, there may be a team that is just not as good. But I think that if you look at other sports where, for example, for us in the North America scene, where you hear about tanking and that, but the reason why people are tanking is because there's another goal of getting a higher draft spot. That doesn't exist here either. So I don't really buy into the negative aspect of it. And look, I'm a product of Challenger Series myself. But, I think over time, this model where you have, 10 teams for now, maybe there's expansion down the line, whatever Riot decides, is going to be the healthiest ecosystem for all parts of the system.
I think from a league point of view, I mean, Carlos, I appreciate your point there, because obviously you have been traditionally a top team, right? Like when we look at it from a league point of view, whether the top team relegates or whatever relegates doesn't matter, right? It's just the fact that there's a relegation, because every team is part of the ecosystem, and is something we feel like. Okay, let me restart this. I grew up in Germany, in Munich. Football, pretty big deal there. Has been a big passion of mine when I grew up, and I can completely relate to a lot of Europeans saying this feels just alien to me. This doesn't feel like sports, or however you want to phrase that. I can certainly relate. And when matter of fact, like most of the team that we have in our office is European, and they, I will have to say it took some convincing for a lot of people here to get over this initial hump, because we just got to recognize there is just some form of bias there. It's just, if you're not used to something, it's going to be alien to you in the beginning. I recognize that. For me, the big thing that turned it around for me in my head was, football is great, but football had like 100 years to build their system. Yeah. They have like 8 layers of competition that build on top of each other, all of which are, I'm not going to say like every single team in every layer there is sustainable. That's not the case. But, each of these layers has some form, like in the very low layers, it's all like government supported. Like that's really grassroots. And then as you go up, like if you as a like first division team drop down to the second division, that doesn't mean that you're dead as like a business. Sure, it is a big hit. Like it is terrible, but it doesn't mean that you have to close shop immediately. And then there's even a third division in many of the bigger regions that can also be still considered, pro, at least like semi-pro level, that you can, survive in, and there's mechanics in place that sort of like protect you there. I feel like we're just not in a position in league where we can support this like at this point in time. I've seen a lot of comments say, why don't you just make Challenger Series sustainable? Why don't you,
what does that mean?
Why don't you just, change the format or change whatever, and then make it so that if you drop down from LCS, it's not so bad? The problem with that is it's really hard to do that. It's just not.
But you don't just make something sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, from your guys' perspective, you guys have both played in Challenger, or both had teams in Challenger. I mean, do you feel like you could have sustained a business like independent of Riot in Challenger with the viewership you got, with the support you got from fans? Was that a sustainable model for you?
Not at all. The only reason to be in Challenger at the time was to get to LCS.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we at the time, paid then LCS prices of players. And so the model was just ass backwards. That was literally the only reason. There was no reason to be in Challenger in and of itself. And I think to Mark's point, when you think about, if you get relegated in soccer, he's saying about mechanics. I mean, these guys, they get balloon payments from the leagues that they are leaving to help them sustain, and major revenue sources that still are there. That it's just not possible.
And they have
right
long-term contracts with players, so when they go down, they can choose to sell a top player, and then they have like really good lesser players. So every time a good team went down into second division, for example, Atletico Madrid went down once in La Liga to second division. It took them literally a year to go back up, and it was actually not that hard. Why is that? Because it's many games, it's many players. So the more variables in play, the more likely it is that the better team wins more often. Or the more likely it is that the better team doesn't find a catastrophic event when they go down. You know what I mean?
A single variable going wrong doesn't affect it when there's more
Exactly.
variables.
It's the same way as when there's a BO5 in League of Legends, there's a higher chance of a better team winning. It's literally the same reason. So following up on Mark's point, which I think is totally right, we are building something that doesn't exist, literally. Nothing existed before that is close to what we're doing today. There's nothing. So we're building from zero, and we are trying out. We will commit mistakes, and we will fix them and upgrade them along the way. And this is one of those things. You know, we identified that for our industry, with the variables we play, there's a high likely chance that relegation is counterproductive. So I think this is a good move.
So the next kind of topic that I think is really important here, we've talked a lot about the ecosystem and this being better with the removal of relegation, and something that we've already brought up a few different times is the revenue sharing. And Mark, you talked kind of briefly about it earlier, but why don't you run us through just an overview of how this revenue sharing is actually going to work? What do the percentages look like? What are some of the details there?
Yeah, sure. At the top level, the structure looks like this. We will have a league revenue pool. So this is an imaginary pool to which all of the revenues that the league generates from sponsorships and media distribution, licensing, and so forth flow into. So 100% of what Riot generates on that end will flow into the league revenue pool. Additionally, a portion of what the teams generate from their business will flow into that pool as well. And after one season, we will take a look how much is in that pool and then distribute those funds according to we'll distribute it with the percentages of 32.5 to the league, which is what Riot would just use to operate the league, 32.5% to the teams, and 35% to the players. So one thing I wanted to clarify is because I've seen some misunderstanding there when we say 35% to the players, it's not that physically the money will be paid from Riot to the players. The players will remain employees of the teams, so the money will effectively flow to the teams and from there to the players, right? But how it works with the 35% is that we take a look at the salaries that have been paid to the players in that given year, and do a calculation and check whether the salaries in total in the league that have been paid to the players are more or less than 35% of this revenue pool. Now, if they were less than what the revenue pool generated for the league, that means that we feel the players deserve more. So the difference between the actual salaries that have been paid and the 35% of the LRP, that will then be paid out to the players as a bonus.
Cool.
If it's not the case, and if the player salaries were so high that they actually are more than what the league was able to generate, then nothing happens. Then the additional salary on top will be paid out of pocket by the teams.
And Mark, just to clarify something that you just said, for yourself to clarify, when you said the Riot portion will be used to operate the league, you mean but that's not going to set the budget of the league. So the actual production value that we have now and all the great things that the league is doing, content-wise, etc., will continue to happen. Riot still will continue to front those expenses.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think it's a little bit like it will be for the teams. So we don't expect like this model in the immediate term to be able to fund, all of the costs of the league. That would be pretty
Yeah, I just want people.
TLDR,
ambitious.
players get everything at first.
No, I wanted to just make sure that people understood that you're not going to sacrifice the product.
Yeah, let's say
No,
Yeah, I just want
Yes.
it's not going to set the
in
operating
the theoretical
budget of the league.
it
world
is not
where
good. No, that
yeah.
32.5% are not going to set the operating
Right.
budget.
Of course, when this thing scales, you would hope that would exceed expenses. on
In an
your
ideal
end.
world,
Sure.
at some point in the future, that would be great because we're looking at this as something that we want to do for decades, and
Yep.
that means that we want to be in a position where this is sustainable at some point. But of course, we will have to pay out of pocket.
So yeah, no matter what happens in the first year, you can expect consistently high quality broadcasts.
And EU's
That's-
done a great job this year.
Yeah, it's incredible actually.
Put that in your hands, Drake. 'cause
Yeah, there
that's
you
your
go.
job. Yeah,
Yeah, he was just trying to put the ball aside.
make the broadcast.
It's on you. It's on you.
All right, cool. So I mean that's an interesting thing. So I know that the player, you've explained the player part pretty well, but in terms of the teams, how are we deciding what teams get in terms of percentages here? Because it's mentioned in the article, there's some competitive metrics, there's some engagement metrics. Do you have like an overview of what those are? What we're actually looking at there? Competitive feels pretty straightforward, but engagement's a little different.
Sure, yeah. So as you've mentioned, there will be competitive as well as engagement metrics, because we do want to reward teams more that do a better job overall in terms of competitive and in terms of engagement. So for competitive, it's pretty easy. It's just going to be, how well did you perform? We have a ranking. We're a league. So that one's easy, and then there will be a distribution formula according to how you've placed. And when it comes to engagement, like the overall thinking there is which team was the one that brought the most viewers, the most engagement to the league, to the broadcast, to the stream. So there's going to be a variety of things we can take into account, which will be baked into a magic formula, which will then be used to rank all the teams.
Cool. And is all of this about the engagement that they bring directly to the product of LCS? And looking at that, does it also interact with, let's say, content features? If we were to put out a feature about, let's say, a G2 player, would that also be factored into it? Or is it pretty much all exclusively about the viewership or the engagement that they bring to the product of EU LCS specifically?
Yeah, so we might factor in some supplementary things, but it is true that at its core, the most important thing, I don't want to sound super corporate, right? But the big monetization opportunity for us is the broadcast, right? So sponsorships that go along with that, and any media deals we will be able to do with that. So that will be the core of it. But as you say, there can be activations that don't necessarily can directly be correlated to that. So we will try and take those into account. We will have to see how we, in detail, manage that.
Okay. It's interesting to hear kind of how we're going to be providing back to the teams, right? You talk about competitive engagement. What are the teams actually putting into this? Because teams are also putting in, you said, a percentage of whatever they're making, but like what is that percentage actually coming from in terms of what teams are going to be putting on the table and providing to the league or to this pool?
It will be sponsorship revenue that teams generate, like individual sponsorships that teams might do. It will also include a portion of merch that they might do. So overall, business that is generated by being part of this league, utilizing the brand that they use in the league, that's the core of what the league will share in.
Is there any opportunity in the future for more kind of maybe in-game things? I know when we look at successes in other esports, we've seen a lot of success with kind of in-game resources or in-game, whatever it is, cosmetic upgrades, banners, champions, whatever. I mean, probably not champions. Don't get your hopes up, guys.
Yeah.
But like, is there any
skins,
stickers,
emotes.
skins,
Words,
etc.?
Yeah.
So is there a plan to, like, in this long-term partnership world, to kind of try to bring more aspects of the teams and the partners into the actual game, League of Legends?
So I will caveat this by saying that I'm not the authority to speak on digital because this is something that we are managing centrally. The reason being that it has always been the philosophy of Riot that we want to ensure gameplay experience is consistent across the worlds. That has been like one of the core values that we have as a company. So it is not the plan, at least that not for now, that we say, okay, like for this region, we're going to individually create a new digital line that doesn't exist anywhere else because we feel that that would be unfair to everyone else and just not be healthy. That's never how we approached it. Or I should correct. Actually, we did approach it that way. I remember, like in the past, we've had like exclusive skins in certain regions at some point, but we realized that that's not a great idea, and we moved away from that. So this is something that's managed centrally. So I'm not an authority on this, but I will say that we are definitely constantly looking into what new possibilities could there be of combining esports with in-game items, in-game monetization. We have traditionally had the team summoner icons that have been going on for a few years. But on top of that, we have on an international event basis a few skins. And we have been playing around with emotes, right? So for the skins, I think the difficulty is we have so many teams, right? We have so many regions. 14 regions, let's say it's 10 teams everywhere, 140 teams.
Yeah, I think skins is the one that I don't think people are expecting as much of.
150 champions, so 140 times 150, you do the math.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so but I mean, is this something that like I mean, I understand that this is like a really complicated thing and the philosophy behind why Riot doesn't want to just give exclusive Europe team things that other regions can't have, but is this something that you think that there will be a push for in the future in terms of esports is kind of making it more interactive with the core League of Legends experience?
That I would say for sure. I mean, something that we want to look at is if I'm an esports fan right now, how can I express that? How can I take part? How can I enhance my experience of being a fan of a team or a fan of LCS? Right now, this is very limited what I can do. I mean, I can buy that icon. Okay, great. But then, there's not much. And we're looking at what others are doing. We have some great own ideas. I can't really reveal anything right now, but we do feel like expression of fandom and really creating a deep connection with the fan and the team and the league. That's hugely important, and that's something we are investing resources in trying to figure out how we can do this the best way.
I mean, I like the idea that I like more opportunities to only during Worlds flash EU team logos, as I would be biased for me to flash an EU team logo during the regular season. One thing I'm curious about is we talk about like team sharing and some of their profits from their merch, etc. But we've got a lot of teams that, especially for both you, Ben, and Carlos, who are presence in multiple esports. So is that something that these teams and these orgs need to be concerned about is potentially having these revenue pools or sharing revenue pools from another esports with us because we're asking them to share revenue, or is that something that we've already planned and accounted for?
Mm-hmm. So I think there's two parts to this question. I'm going to try and answer the first part a little more broadly because I've seen this come up also in the community. Will any one factor advantage or disadvantage a team in the application process? So this factor could be, I've already tried somewhere else, or I've been a part of a different league, or I am a multi-gaming org, or I am a football club, or I am in an NBA club. And to that, like generally, I would just say no singular factor like this will disqualify anyone from anything. Like it is always whatever factor it may be. And let's take the multi-gaming one as an example. We expect the teams to tell us how that is going to benefit what they do with the league. So if they are able to give us a good plan and a good story and explain us why this specific circumstance, example multi-gaming org, is beneficial for what they're trying to do, and it's going to have like a synergy effect. There's like, I don't know, whatever it may be. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, right? But
hint, people looking to apply.
Then that's totally fine. Like if they were to say that, well, sure, we were doing a lot of games, and League is the least of our priorities. Then it's like, okay, that's not really awesome.
Yeah, I can say from experience that just looking at our Counter-Strike team, which is a legendary French team, Rocket League World Champions and Hearthstone, really respected, one of the top teams out there. We have actually successfully gotten fans from these teams and these games into League of Legends, actually. So I would argue that it's potentially a positive if you know how to use it. But with that said, when it comes into rev share, it is no question that League of Legends is the largest esport out there today. So we would be lying to ourselves if I'd be telling you, whatever revenue we generate, 5% of it is due to League of Legends. That would be a lie, right? And all of us know that. So I'm pretty sure that we are all going to come up, in that case, we will come up with a kind of reasonable share that makes sense and is fair, and I have no doubts on that.
Yeah.
I mean, to that point, I guess, because the second part of the question, and you touched on that, trust is great, but of course, we want to ensure that we are doing this as accurately as possible, because it would be unfair, especially to all of the other teams, if we didn't. So we will need to have, several accounting and auditing processes in place to make sure that revenues are assigned correctly, and we're quite confident that the mechanics we'll put in place will make sure that there's no shenanigans.
And you have the benefit also of the year lag against North America. So they will, I'm assuming, going through a similar process, and there'll be a lot of learnings from that. And
Sure.
I think we'll land in a really good spot.
Now I'm curious for Carlos, you kind of brought up how League is this pretty big source of revenue within your organization, and Ben is another multi-esports org owner. Does this still feel like a good deal if you are already very successful in the current ecosystem? Let's say the relegation is removed as it is currently, but there's not a long-term partnership model. You don't have this revenue sharing. Does this still feel like a good deal to you as a team that's already performing quite well, as a team that's already been building fan bases at international events?
You just have to look at the potential value add as opposed to where you are today, right? When I look at the perfect ideal scenario, is a scenario where the game that I love today and grew up with, which is League of Legends, is up there still. That the league I'm invested in is the greatest league across multiple games in the whole esports industry, and that the monetization opportunities and fan engagement opportunities are better than anywhere else. And today, while we're doing a pretty good job, just in the LCS, as I told you, just being in League of Legends, of course, is a big selling point for both investors and partners alike. It could always get better, and the existence of this partnership would undoubtedly make things better.
Yeah, totally. I agree with Carlos. And then also the other major component is media rights. Again, not to get into a lot of corporate speak, but the value of the media rights of League of Legends as we continue to grow it will only continue to grow itself. And now through the partnership model, we as teams, if successful in our applications and are part of the system, will have a piece of that. And as will players. So I think it's a great, positive, giant step forward.
I mean, it's good to hear. It's good to hear you guys have this confidence in the system, because I think a lot of people might be. We talked about it earlier, kind of about the fear of the quote unquote bottom feeder, right? The team that doesn't want to put anything in, that doesn't want to do that. So it's good to hear that you guys are more focused on the potential upside, and this could just be this giant thing that continues to grow, that is this fantastic long-term investment, versus the potential fear that I think some people have, that this might end up costing you.
Here's the thing. People see the surface of things. People see the final product. They see there's an EULCS product, The production quality is very good. Just they see teams, they see players getting paid normally month by month, but they don't know the background, they don't know the back office of all that, right? And for all of that to make sense, the whole thing has to be sustainable. And people just see again the final product. They don't know what it takes to be there, and what it's taking all the stakeholders, including Riot, all the pretty much. I mean, loss of funds. Like many companies are losing money thanks to the non-sustainability of the current kind of system, and that people don't see. And they would probably see if this would keep going on for the next 5 years, because they would see incredible brands dying out. They would see perhaps production quality not growing at the pace it would grow with a system like that. They wouldn't see big brands, just name any, lifestyle brands known by everybody, getting involved as much as they would with the new system. So people are going to jump into or some people are going to jump into the love train. Some people are going to jump into the hate train. But those that are jumping into the hate train are likely jumping into the hate train because they lack the context of running a business with the current system in place.
I think fair. I think a lot of fans don't have the perspective. Some of them are gonna get it from hearing you guys speak today, and I think at the same time there's gonna be a lot of people who are defending the interest of what they believe to be the best system for them competitively. So good that we're speaking to those people now.
I mean, ultimately, purest form of view with the competitive side and the hate train. If that's their point of view, that type of system will not be here in 5 years. Like we just wouldn't exist.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So they can,
You can only lose so much money.
yeah. So the purest view will not sustain.
Yeah, have to be willing to make some sacrifices to make it a business. But I mean, if it gives us more League of Legends 20 years from now,
Oh my God, sign me up.
Yeah.
let's do it. All right, so the biggest piece of this whole thing is that we've kind of all generally agreed that this is a plan that's good for the business, it's good for the long term, but of course, neither of you gentlemen have made it in yet. There's still this big application process that I know is scaring a lot of people, owners and fans alike. Is their team going to be there? Is it not? Mark, there's a big list of questions that were kind of included in the initial article, but can you give us the kind of the TLDR of this process? What does this application process look like? And most importantly, what is Riot looking for when it comes to finding these long-term partners?
Yeah, that's probably the question I've heard the most over the past week or so. And still, I don't have a prepared answer for that. Look at that. Well, you've seen the list that we've had in the announcement. So I'm not going to repeat all of them, but all of these things are obviously factors. But if I had to summarize this, what we're looking for is essentially the vision of that team. We want to understand how you tick, how you think you're going to be beneficial for the league, and not only the league, but how you're also going to help level up all of the other teams in the league, because only collectively we can win. So what is it that you bring to the table? What is your strategy to reach fans, increase the audience, engage them? How are you going to, in this very fragmented market with a lot of countries and cultures, how are you going to resonate with this very diverse audience? Europe is special in that regard. There's no one solution to that, but we are interested in hearing how you think about that, how you feel about that.
I'm interested too, because as a non-European, I can't even as somebody who's lived in Europe, I can't even begin to unpack the puzzle of marketing across so many different countries and so many different languages. But I'm going to put Ben on the spot because I don't have to apply, luckily for me. Ben, on the other hand, has to have an application, has to have a strategy for marketing to Europe, for marketing to all these different audiences. Can you give us a sample? What do you think is the approach when it comes to appealing to a European audience?
We can't give away all the secret sauce right now. But I think ultimately there is no one solution. I think that you have to, unless you are, say, a soccer club where you have a clear identity in one specific market, I think you need to do multiple different things with outreach, including utilizing your players and utilizing your brand and your social media following in order to translate into different languages. Basic low-hanging fruit activities like that could ultimately go a long way when you're trying to build a brand and reach different people. And then one of the other main reasons and ways to gain that following across different regions is to win. And Carlos has done a good job of that to date. We look to dethrone him soon. We ourselves also have had a great run up until this past split. Going to Worlds was a great experience. I think the amount of fans and the building of our brand that we were able to accomplish through that was huge. I remember when unfortunately we lost to SKT, the subreddit changed to fans of Misfits was the banner on the top, and there was a huge appreciation for our team and our players, and so I think at the end of the day, competitive success will drive a lot of your engagement, and then a lot of it is just blocking and tackling underneath that.
Yeah, and Carlos, you have a lot of experience, with pan-European teams and products between, the French CSGO team. You've got a very diverse Hearthstone team. You've got a Berlin-based but very pan-European League of Legends team. What have your experiences been with kind of marketing to this European audience?
And the US World Champions as well.
Sorry. Yeah, there you go.
Look, regardless of the region, really, G2 Esports is a reflection and a byproduct of our core values and way of doing things in our DNA, really much. First of all, we are focused, not in this order, but we are focused in competitive success. This is our DNA. We understand game mechanics, what makes up for a good team, what makes up for a good kind of group of people, what kind of characters you need to have in order to find success. Not always the most expensive players are going to make you win. So I think I consider ourselves pretty good at that. Then secondly, and not less important, it was always my dream to have an incredible amount of fans, an incredible amount of haters, and overall make sure that anyone who knows about esports knows about G2, and that even if you're a hater or a lover, you're going to watch our game. Because if you're a hater, you want us to lose, and I want you to root against me. I want you to buy Misfits. I want you to buy a Misfits jersey so that my fan can buy or feels incentivized to buy G2's jersey. And it's a very competitive, survival of the fittest way of thinking, but that's the way I envision competition, and that's the way I envision branding. I envision all these things as, again, gladiators in an arena. I'm gonna kill you because otherwise you're gonna kill me. Yeah. And my intention is not just to kill you, but I want to make a show of it. I want the whole arena full of blood.
This is getting dark, dude. How recently did you watch Spartacus? You keep throwing these mixes.
I know, man. I told you already. Actually, my favorite film is Gladiator, so it's not a coincidence. I'm telling you, this is all a part of why we built this company. And pretty much, if you look at my competitive career, it also fits actually. Perhaps I was less mature, but but all these things fit. So yeah, that's how I envision this. And in relation to the application itself. Of course, undertaking such a process is incredibly tough, and it takes a lot of energy and resources, and there is nothing certain in life, and I feel I feel optimistic that our team, our staff team, and the love and really work ethic we built this company with is going to hopefully allow us to be part of this partnership moving forward. We believe we can and will be incredibly useful for the success of the leagues moving forward for both our colleagues and competitors, teams, and Riot Games as a publisher and developer alike. So I'm very looking forward for what's coming, and I like challenges. So let's do this.
All right. Carlos just kind of gave us a little bit of the elevator pitch on how he's going to kind of market his team to Riot Games. Ben, is there anything that, what do you feel is the biggest strength of your organization right now in terms of what you could offer a league like the EU LCS?
While I'm not as vocal in my gladiatorship as Carlos is, we also have a drive to win. And I think that competitive nature and fire in us is also our DNA. I think we take a more, maybe a more mild-mannered, public-facing approach to that. But behind the scenes, our guys work their asses off. And then I think also from a content standpoint, the stories that we are telling right now, we've released a bunch of features this past split that I think the Riot themselves would be envious of in terms of quality and storytelling. And so I hope that also aspires other teams in our league to produce the same quality of stuff, because ultimately, we as teams cannot rely on the league to tell our stories.
For sure.
We are responsible for telling our own stories. And I think that teams need to do a real more complete job of doing that, to getting the stories of our players out and the stories of our our highs and our lows. And so I think that we do a great job of that. And again, I also think, similar to Carlos, where the staff that we have here at Misfits will put our full passion and effort and resources into creating the best possible application for us.
This is actually a good point. It's a bit off topic, actually. But Ben is mentioning about content and creating your own storylines, and I'm probably known for being vocal about some of the other EULCS teams. Connecting to all these points, I think Misfits is one of the teams that has done a really good job when it comes into branding and content. And I would like to put G2, of course, in the same group. And there was a storyline around our players. It was always coming from a content piece that we created, and that was a conscious effort. So you can actually make up what people speak about you. We can talk about the new kids of the block when we come into LCS, the villains. We can talk about the kings of Europe. We can talk about retaking the throne. All these things, we push ourselves, even if some of them may not be on paper as nice for your brand as you may think about. It's actually fantastic. People talk. It's up in Reddit. People talk about it. There's conversation, and then all of a sudden
it becomes a thing.
Yeah, all of a sudden Dracos just
same with us with last year with the 1 year plan. That was something that was very a conscious effort and desire from us to have that be our thing.
Hussein brought it up every time I spoke to him.
Yeah. So I completely agree. And I think ultimately, because we have our own voice and our own channels as teams, we're going to scream.
Yep.
It's exciting to hear. And I guess the last question to kind of round out this whole discussion is, when can Mark expect your applications?
As quickly as we
Last
can.
day.
Yeah, last day.
You got a bit of time. Open application to just started 29th, right? So technically it starts today, right?
28th is when we've opened it, yes.
So yesterday. You guys could have been first day. It would have been unlikely, but could have happened.
That would have been a big statement right there.
And then the other question is, Mark, do they get any extra credit for doing a podcast with us? Does this count? Do they get a bonus?
Absolutely not.
It will be held against them.
It's going to be a minus point, yeah. Let me write that down. -1.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark, for kind of running us through a lot of the changes. And, of course, thank you, both gentlemen, for your perspective on the league changes and also for those last-minute kind of selling points for why Misfits and G2 are such compelling orgs and in a partnership future.
People don't see that. But Ben is extremely handsome in real life.
Well, we'll have to post a picture.
Yeah, we'll get a picture because this is still audio.
Those are
only.
kind words coming from the handsome man yourself.
Oh, that's too handsome, man.
See, okay, so I thought they were just buttering up Mark, but they're actually buttering up each other. This is interesting.
Yeah. It's getting uncomfortable. I was already uncomfortable listening to the two.
But here's the thing, man,
two sales
PR.
Yeah,
you're half German. I'm Spanish. That is a huge kind of cultural difference right there. I can get away with these things,
Okay.
I can get away with these things.
La verdad.
There you are. He's from Miami, right?
Habla español.
There you go.
Oh. All right, well, we're going to stop it there. I love it, though. I love this love song between owners, and we'll make Mark a little more comfortable, as we'll call that it. But that is the bonus episode about the dive. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Owners are on Twitter. Mark is also on Twitter. Yes?
Yes, I don't use it as much, but yes.
What is your handle?
Riot Snowbird.
Riot Snowbird. Also on Reddit, u/Riot Snowbird,
yes.
I believe. So reach out.
And what is your handle,
questions.
Ben?
At Ben Spunt.
And what is your handle? Oh, my handle is @CarlosR.
Is it? That's not Ocelot anymore, is it?
No,
Carlos
I
R.
changed it. You know why? Because I want to start kind of. Listen, I'm Ocelot, but I'm also Carlos, right?
Okay.
My mom even calls me Ocelot, and I'm like, listen, my name is Carlos. Like you got I mean, you gave me that name. I mean.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your final fun fact of the day. Carlos's mom still calls him Ocelot. And with that, we'll see you guys next.